Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. In this episode, we're going over my best wrestling photos of 2019 and how I accomplished it and how I shot all of those. Check it out. With the current situation we're all in, and I've been looking through the archives a lot lately, checking out some old projects, and for a project coming up, I decided to look back at my year of wrestling photos. If you want a little more information on how I got started shooting wrestling, I did a live Twitch stream a long time ago that is still up on this channel about my history getting into pro wrestling in the link below. And this year started out really cool. For once, I always joke that my first show of the year is always WrestlePalooza. First wrestling and WrestlePalooza is always super near and dear to my heart. But this year, actually the day before the WrestlePalooza double shot this year was actually a Showtime wrestling show. And I got this really cool image of Airwolf and Angel Dorado squaring off. With this one, I obviously had to use, the lighting's not super great in that, so I had to use my trusty flash. In this case, luckily, the ceilings are short enough that I was able to more bounce it off the ceiling to get a more even glow as opposed to just blasting it right at everybody. But because of that, obviously I had to keep my shutter speed a little lower to compensate for the sync flash. So that's why the standout shots are more of the poses, more of the looking and checking out stuff like this photo. But then the next day we got the ring set up. We went to historic First Avenue in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it was awesome. Like, it was 2 nights in a row, which made everything super, super duper fun. Because not only did we have an amazing wrestling show night one, we didn't have to tear the ring down. It was the best thing ever. And I got a couple of cool shots from night one. Super Thunder Frog doing his entrance with all the green lights. Like, this is why I love the lighting at First Ave. Like, the crew there is so good. And actually, Thunder Frog, I believe, still has this as his profile picture on Instagram. And then I got another fun shot of Kikutaru, because it was Kikutaru versus Colt Cabana. Comedy gold. I love Kikutaru. He is my favorite person and that I've met from Japan. Like, he is so cool. An absolute, like, if you love that style of wrestling, he's an absolute legend. But he's so down to earth. And as you all know, like, WrestlePalooza is wrestling, burlesque, and live music. So Kikutaru finds and realizes, hey, the burlesque dancer and the referees didn't remove all the clothing. Joy Coy's bra is still in the ring. We are utilizing this. So he put Joy's bra on his head. And, Colt's going crazy. Colt's, like, trying not to lose it. Bryce is being Bryce and having to admonish him, like, hey, get that off your head. That was terrible, Bryce Remsburg. I am apologizing to Bryce. So sorry, buddy. But, like, one of the super cool highlights of night one was the fact that we got, and kind of part of why it became a 2-night event instead of 1 night, was we had the Great Sasuke. The Great Sasuke, and on night one, he faced Shane Swerve Strickland, now currently Isaiah Swerve Scott, who is, like, I want to say this is his second to last show with First Wrestling because obviously he got signed. He got signed to NXT. And, like, couldn't happen to a cooler dude. And then the next night, like, Sasuke's known for putting his body on the line and doing some crazy stuff. And, like, Canon put him against the current generation's version of that. The guy who will do anything to get a win. And he put him against Darby Allin. And, like, this is, I want to say right before Darby got announced that he got signed by AEW. And Darby's super cool. Like, Darby's just Darby. Like, he is this weird, this odd enigma that in the ring you can't stop watching. Like, he's got that, you know, Sasuke obviously has that. Like, these two, like, didn't destroyed themselves to beat the other person. Like, Darby did the coffin drop onto the apron, which was super scary. Sasuke did a senton into a chair, destroying the chair. You know, the match was so much fun. And then right before that, we got to have a really fun match with David Arquette and Colt Cabana. And I loved every minute of it. It was so much fun. Like, you could see the crowd's reaction to David Arquette. And it was like, wait, he just did that? He just did a head scissors? He just did a Hurricane Rana? Like, David Arquette can actually wrestle? What? This is so weird. Then, like, a couple weeks later, you know, we're back to our regular scheduled programming, Pro Wrestling Battleground. Of course, Angel Dorado is just going crazy and decides to just fly over the top rope. This one, once again, I had to use the Flash. Everything at First Ave was a very high shutter speed because the lighting's so good that I was able to actually use that. But then back at regular venues, lower shutter speed, higher ISO, and just letting my Flash just take over. You know, obviously I don't have the flat. I've got a manual Flash, like, it's not a TTL. That's one of the upgrades I want to make this year, hopefully. But, you know, being able to use that and, like, dial in my settings, like, I don't know exactly each time. Like, it's very much a feel thing, like, each different venue. But yeah, like, it was Angel Dorado. And then the main event was actually Airwolf versus Scott Story. One of my favorite spots to shoot at Wolepski's Blues Saloon, where Pro Wrestling Battleground takes place, is they've got this cool little wall right by by the ring, and that wall gets abused so often. It's not even funny sometimes, but then other times it just gets used as a kick up. And, you know, Airwolf did a tornado DDT off this, and it was super cool. And then later, then we're going to fast forward, because I did 42 shows last year. 42 or 43. 43, I think it was. And, you know, I started working at Heavy on Wrestling in November of 2018. And so I got to shoot my second Heavy On show, and Airwolf decides to climb up this support trust thing, like this column in the middle of nowhere in the venue, and just dive on Darren Corbin. And that was just super cool moment to see. Airwolf and Angel Dorado show up a lot in this because I'm able to photograph them a lot, and they're always very visually striking. You know, this was a 4-way ladder match for the Pro Wrestling Battleground Breakout Championship. Yeah, Dorado is insane. You know, he's like 19, so he's Gumby still. So he's like, oh no, I'm just going to dive over this. So he dives over the ladder and it's just so like interesting, like the angles I was able to get during that match. And then March, the day after my birthday, thanks buddy, thanks Canon for booking that show. It was nearly an all women's show. It was, other than 3 pieces of talent, it was all women. And I got a cool shot of Solo Darling at the Uptown VFW. This venue, obviously I needed to use a flash because like there wasn't quite as high of lighting. I wanted the quality to still look as good as the photos that I took at First Ave. This one I actually screwed up on. And thankfully I had the flash because for that show I do photo and video clips, and I still had this at my video shutter speed. So thankfully Solo is, very good at holding those poses. I'm showing you the good and the bad of all this, And the Uptown VFW champion at that point, Darren Corbin, showed up and had an open challenge to anyone in the back. And out comes Orange Cassidy, who was not supposed to be booked until August. Guess what? OC's here. This was the first time I met OC. And like OC's one of my favorite dudes. He's so cool. Like you probably have all watched him now on AEW. That's what you get in real life too. Like he's just that laid back. Like he's just that laid back. He's just that chill all the time. Like almost to a frustrating extent. But yeah, like OC is the coolest. It was him and Darren Corbin. He was at this point he was the IWTV Internet Champion, a title that is now held by Warhorse. He was so cool with it. So he ended up becoming a double champion by the end of the night, because it was basically a title for title match. And then right after that, we had the main event of that show, Jessica Havoc taking on Kimber Lee. Kim shows up a bunch in these, and so is Jess. Probably 2 of my favorite women's wrestlers. Like Kim is so much fun. Like she is so good. This last year, like every single match I've seen her have, like even on, in part 2 of this, you'll see a match that she had with Chris Statlander. It's so cool. Like Kim is so good. And Kim and Jessica had an awesome match. And then I had to film a vignette afterwards with 2 of them as well. Both super great. Like I love these 2. All right, and then we got to explore a lot of different venues for a little bit here. First Wrestling always does some interesting shows around the town, and they were able to go on to the other side of the river for once. We got into St. Paul, and we did the St. Paul Saints had a First Wrestling night. Airwolf and Eric Cannon threw out the first pitch, and then we got to do some skits on the grounds themselves, including Angel Dorado giving Darren Corbin a Hurricane Rana on the right baseline. Yeah, right baseline. Was so ridiculous, as they're supposed to be doing this game because normally they have fans and stuff do it, but because it was First Wrestling night, and because wrestlers will be wrestlers, they volunteered for like all these games. Like, no, we can do it. One of my favorite shows was during the year is always the Open Street Slam at Up Down. And this year it was a little chaotic, just slightly chaotic. We had open streets in Minneapolis at Lynn Lake area. We did that. It was going on at the same time as Grand Old Days in St. Paul. Cannon, being Cannon, had to appear at both. It's his shows. And he wanted, photographs at both. So myself and Wayne McCarty both flip-flopped. But because I ended up being Cannon's driver, that meant I flip-flopped and then flip-flopped back. So, like, we went from doing the Open Streets show, ran over to Grand Old Days, Cannon wrestled a match, got back in my car, came back over, wrestled his match at Open Streets against Aaron Corbin in the main event for that show. So it was super cool. It being outdoor, obviously I was able to get a way higher shutter speed, especially because it was a bright sunny day. I wish I had an ND filter. I need to pick that up. I need to pick those up. It ended up being a really packed June. Like, it was a really, really packed summer for wrestling shows for me. And we're ending this video with the shows in June. The first of them being, it was called Mitzvah Mania. It was our first show for First Wrestling at the Temple of Aaron Synagogue. And we got to have Chris Masters versus Colt Cabana in the main event. I'd never gotten to see Masters live. And, like, he's, a physical specimen for sure. And then we ended June right back where we started the year at First Ave. Bryce Remsburg, I want to say, unfortunately, this is Bryce's last show for First Wrestling. Because, he had to get that, he had to just be one of the best referees out there and just get signed by AEW. That being said, literally couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I love Bryce so much. Yeah, that show had so many highlights between the impromptu match of Orange Cassidy versus Joey Ryan, where OC did Joey had, just presented himself right by Orange Cassidy's photo right on Orange Cassidy's shoulder, as you see in the photo, and OC just turns and sees it, and it's like, ah! It's super funny. And then Darren Corbin interfered and, just be a dick. No pun intended with that one, since it's a Joey Ryan match. And then the main event was the Lucha Bros, Pentagon and Phoenix, taking on the Flip Bros, Airwolf and Angel Dorado. Starts with them, ends with them. And taking on the North, who Ethan Page and Josh Alexander, who, like, I hadn't met Josh up until this point. And thankfully he's been on a couple shows. He's been on another show since. Super cool dude. Ethan Page is freaking Ethan Page. Like, he rolls up and I was like, Ethan, you're not booked until what? What are you doing here? And he's just like, shh. The North are probably my favorite tag team out there right now. I might be a little biased because Ethan's cool. But, like, the North are so cool, are so good. Getting to see them against the Flip Bros and against the Lucha Bros was a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody, for watching this video. I tried to keep it as short as I could. But going over 6 months of wrestling photos and telling stories, takes a little longer than you think. Tune in next time. And I'll have a lot more info in part 2. Because, like I said, stuff stuff started going crazy the second half of the year, and I'll have that one up on Wednesday. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video channel. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Knocked Out Films, and thanks for tuning in. See you on Wednesday. Bye.